Hey everybody, welcome in. This is our first inaugural episode of Between the Pages, and I'm really excited to share this with you. This past week I finished reading Jim Butcher's Small Favor. It's number 10 in the Harry Dresden series, and I wanted to start off with a little synopsis about it. And yes, most of the information that I've gathered comes from Wikipedia, but it's the best and most succinct way to formulate the ideas so everyone can get a sense of what this is. Spoiler alert, I am giving a plot summary, I'm giving my review, so if you haven't read it and you plan on reading it, please think carefully if you want to continue with this. Small Favor takes place 1 year after the events in White Knight, as usual. It's a year after the previous book's events end. Dresden is confronted by Queen Mab, calling in one of the favors owed her by Harry, that he be her emissary and protect John Marcone, Marcone being the crime lord of the Chicago area in Dresden's world. Despite repeated attacks by Gruffs, literally giant goat men, like 3 billy goats gruff, soldiers in service of summer, he tracks Marcone's movements across the city. He finds Hendrix and Miss Guard at one of Marcone's safe houses, having survived an attack by the Denarians. Denarians we've encountered several times due to his encounters with Michael and the swords. They survive the attack by the Denarians, whom he learns have abducted Marcone, the Denarians have. Miss Guard formally requests that the White Council file an objection to the abduction of one signatory of the Unseelie Accords by another. Lucio, a captain of the Wardens, agrees to bring in the archive a 12-year-old girl, Harry, named Ivy, as a neutral party. We've encountered Ivy before, and she's really an incredible character, thinking about her lineage and how people like her came before her, always a woman, always a woman in her 30s, and poor Ivy being, I think she was tasked when she was 10, and we find this out in, I believe it was the 7th book, Dead Masks. And now we're here a couple years later, and she's another big part of the story. Dresden meets Murphy at McAnally's. After updating her, a huge gruff enters to challenge Dresden to a duel, and is saved by Murphy, invoking her duties as a law officer. While Thomas is distracting the gruffs, Dresden confronts Miss Guard and convinces her to tell him of a case of blood samples kept in a locker at Union Station. Harry and Michael are under attack at Union Station by winter minions and the Elder Gruff, but recover the samples. Grievously wounded, the Elder Gruff leaves, warning Dresden that the eldest brother Gruff will kill him. Literally, 3 billy goats gruff. Harry also meets up with Ivy, the archive, her bodyguard Kincaid, and Warden Captain Lucio, who retreat to safety of Dresden's warded apartment. The archive schedules a meeting between Dresden and Nicodemus at the Shed Aquarium. That's a real place in Chicago. During the negotiations, Dresden realizes it's a charade to kidnap the archive. Dresden and Ivy team up to fight off the Denarians. Even though they kill almost every Denarian, Ivy is captured. Nicodemus plans to coerce Ivy into accepting a blackened Denarius, and in desperation, Dresden offers Nicodemus all the denarial and the Knights of the Cross, that the Knights of the Cross have collected, and a sword of the Cross, which Harry's been the keeper of for a few books now. As Ivy being captured would be an unstoppable force for evil, which, as we all know, the archive is a neutral party. She is the key of all knowledge and all memory. Before Dresden's meeting with Nicodemus, Michael asks Dresden about his blasting rod. Dresden realizes he lost his rod after meeting with Queen Mab, but is not sure how or why, and realizes he has been mentally manipulated. At the exchange on an island in Lake Michigan, the Denarians predictably renege, but Dresden and Sonya manage to free Marcone and the archive. Misgard arrives with a rescue copter, but the surviving Denarians return and badly injure Michael. Dresden is abandoned on the island, hunted by the Denarians and their mercenaries, and is eventually cornered by the eldest Gruff. The conflicted Gruff reveals that he has been compelled to attack Dresden as long as they are both on the battlefield. Dresden invokes his boon from Summer for a freshly made donut. Not kidding. He ordered a very specific donut, and as long as they are not on that island at that time, they are no longer on the battlefield, and the Gruff is no longer obligated to kill Harry. The Gruff remarks that the request might take just enough time for Harry to depart the island safely, and says that Summer Court's hunt will end when Dresden re-enters the Chicago city limits. Dresden attempts to escape on Rosanna's boat, but is attacked by Nicodemus and Daedra, whom he barely manages to drive off after Thomas and Murphy return with another boat, and Murphy draws Vitalacius, a sword of the cross Dresden brought with him. They return to the mainland, and Dresden rushes to the hospital to find Michael, still in surgery. In the hospital chapel, Dresden has a heated discussion with a janitor who explains that God has a plan for us all, and vanishes, leaving behind a worn copy of The Two Towers with a marked section. Queen Mab appears in the chapel. She's pleased that the Watchman has enhanced Dresden's potential. She returns his blasting rod and reveals that he would have been killed earlier if he had used it to rescue his friends. Dresden visits Ivy and Kincaid at Murphy's house later. Sonya gives Michael's sword and maracas to Dresden with the instructions to pass it on when the time is right. Michael survived the surgery, but might not make a complete recovery. Dresden and Anastasia Lucio end the day with a pleasant dinner and a delightful evening. So there's a lot to unpack in this book, and there are a few points that I really wanted to go over that made a huge impact on me. One, we all know, and if you don't know, you're about to know. Tolkien is one of my favorite authors in the world to date, just period dot. And the references to the Two Towers were beautiful, wonderful experiences to have, and the impact that they made on Dresden was significant, and he started carrying around this copy of the Two Towers that the Watchman, which we later find out is actually Uriel, leaves behind. So a few of the other points that I wanted to make were that briefly mentioned in this book is a touch of the Wild Hunt. We talked about it extensively in Book 7, Death Masks, if I am correct. And we ran into the Earl King, or Das Earl King. And while I have not had the extensive pleasure of playing through to the end of The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, it made me think about how much this folklore, this myth, has touched our society and our fantasy writings. So I looked into it, and I wanted to discuss what the Wild Hunt is described as. If you've read the Dresden books, if you read Death Masks, you'll know that Das Earl King was a fairy king, and he leads the Wild Hunt, and those that are included in the Wild Hunt are those people that were hunters and great warriors in life before, and then when they died, Das Earl King took their souls. So the internet defines the Wild Hunt as a folklore motif that historically occurs in the folklore of various northern European cultures. Wild hunts typically involve a soul-raving chase led by a mythological figure escorted by a ghostly or supernatural group of hunters passing in wild pursuit. The leader of the hunt is often a named figure associated with Odin in Germanic legends, but may variously be a historical or legendary figure like Theodoric the Great, the Danish king, Vladimir Atterdag, the Welsh psychopomp Gwyn ap Nudd, and biblical figures such as Herod, Cain, Gabriel, or the devil, or an unidentified lost soul or spirit, either male or female. The hunters are generally the souls of the dead or ghostly dogs, sometimes fairies, valkyries, or even elves. Seeing the wild hunt was thought to presage some catastrophe such as war or plague, or at best the death of the one who witnessed it. People encountering the hunt might also be abducted to the underworld or the fairy kingdom. In some instances, it was also believed that people's spirits could be pulled away during their sleep to join the cavalcade. The concept was developed based on a comparative mythology by Jacob Grimm in a Germanic folklore. I don't speak German very well, so I'm not even gonna try and butcher these words. But as a folkloric survival of Germanic pagan tradition, but comparable folk myths are found throughout northern, western, and central Europe. So that was an interesting aspect of this book and part of the series that also connected to a very popular video game and now a Netflix original series. But I really wanted to delve into what The Witcher's Wild Hunt represented, because I didn't get to that part of the game. I was in the beginning and I was just overwhelmed by side quests. So I'm gonna get to it. I swear I will. I promise. If anyone has any thoughts or interjections about The Witcher's Wild Hunt, I'd love to hear about it. I read a little bit about it, but I wasn't able to really appreciate it because I know The Witcher from the series and for the brief day that I played it. The other aspect that I wanted to talk about when it came to Small Favor was the Order of the Blackened Denarius. We've encountered these people many times before, and leading up to this point, we had first-hand exposure to Lashiel, one of the Denarians that Harry was being shadowed by because they were trying to coerce him into taking up one of the Denarian coins. So the Order of the Blackened Denarius, according to fandom.com Dresden Files, the Order of the Blackened Denarius, whose members are referred to as Denarians or Knights of the Coin, is an organization of fallen angels bound to 30 ancient silver coins, the denarii, and seeking to bond with human hosts. The coins are said to be silver pieces given to Judas in exchange for his betrayal of Jesus. Of the 30 coins, 11 are currently believed to be in the possession of the church. So only 19 out in the world. Each coin carried by the Denarians contains the trapped spirit of a fallen angel. Whoever touches the coins is tainted by the fallen within. Tempted and given power, the fallen leads the mortal deeper and deeper into its influence until eventually they have surrendered enough of themselves that the fallen can take control. The Knights of the Cross use a square of white blessed cloth bearing 2 pairs of crosses embroidered with silver thread to pick up and transport the coins to the church for safekeeping. However, Dresden and others have safely carried one or more of the coins through more mundane means, such as gloves to prevent direct skin contact, or by storing them in a bag. Lashiel tells Dresden that the church's precautions are useless because forces like fallen cannot be contained by mere mortals. So we're up in an uproar about who has possession of these coins. At the end of this book, they had collected 13 of the Denari, and suddenly they disappeared. At the end of the book, they allude to it being Miss Guard or one of Marcone's men to pickpocket Harry and taken the coins, but we don't know for sure yet. This is only book 10. Every single Dresden book I've ever read has captivated me from start to finish. It's a fantastic story of supernatural beings, of real life places, folklore and myth that are deep within roots of every story we've probably ever heard. And I can't say enough good things about it. I think I've always given Jim Butcher's Dresden books 4 or 5 stars, depending on like how captivated I was. And 5 stars. There were so many elements that were deep and convincing, like just tactile. I could feel these characters and see them. If you have not picked up Harry Dresden by Jim Butcher, I can't stress to you enough my recommendation. It has been an incredible experience, and I'm only 10 books in. I'm only 10 books in because my reading of the series was interrupted by my librarianship master's program. So I'm now getting to catch up, and I can't wait to see what we have in 11. Number 11, it's on my shelf, I swear, and I'm excited for it. I think to wrap up, the last thing I wanted to talk about, and if I could get my thing to work here, was, yes, there was a very clever nod to Sir Ian McKellen, and that was, I believe, it was in conjunction with the reference to the 2 towers, so that was a beautiful thing for me to see. I would really like people's feedback. Right now I'm working on my 3rd reread of the Night Angel trilogy by Brent Weeks. I'm on the last book, Beyond Shadow, or Beyond the Shadows. It's another fantasy series that I always encourage people to read if you're really into fantasy, magic, stuff like that. I can't say enough good things about Brent Weeks. He was an excellent person. I got to meet him a couple of years ago on one of his book tours for the Lightbringer series, and I hope I get to meet him again. I am really hoping I get to meet Jim Butcher one day, and yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, I'm going to stick around. Otherwise, I will have my daily stream up in a few. Thanks.